Hello my friends, and thanks so much for joining us back at the Galaxy YouTube channel. You might notice something different. We are not at the Galaxy Space Station studio. We are at a different studio. We are in Saratoga Springs, New York at the Advanced Semiconductor Manufacturing Conference.
Good job.
And I am once again joined by our CEO and fearless leader, Mr. Wes Smith.
Thank you, Dan. I would question fearless, but most of the time, yes.
By the way, if you haven't, or you have no idea what the heck I'm talking about, we recently launched a YouTube channel. You can go see a bunch of those videos where Wes laid the groundwork for what is AI, what is machine learning, what's the differences between those, what are those things doing in the semiconductor industry anyway. He broke it down in layman's terms, and if you're a geek, he gets geeky as well. So if you want to see those, click the descriptions below. There's a little eye in the corner there that you can click and go right to those videos. But we're at the conference, and a little birdie told me that you actually presented a paper here.
Yes, it's a shame that the birdie had to because we didn't get you a badge. So next time we'll make sure you get a badge. I'm sorry about that.
Hey, that's fine.
Anyway, yes, you're right. I had the privilege of presenting today a paper that we co-wrote with Dr. Francois Bougeret and Daniele Pagano of ST Microelectronics. That was a very interesting paper to write. We essentially distilled into one document much of the work that has been going on for the last few years. In this case, we're looking at epitaxy process control. And we presented the means of gathering that data, manipulating it, cleaning it, doing some interpolation when necessary, and then taking it through the Galaxy Orion APC algorithm and finding outlier conditions. Now, these are not outlier products. These are outlier conditions on the process equipment.
And for those of you that haven't seen this before, Wes just mentioned two brilliant other minds, other than his, that we also interviewed here at the ASMC conference. So if you want to see those videos, you can hear about what they had to say about the conference and the things that they've been talking about. So I heard you got some good questions from the peanut gallery today. I was not there, and I have not heard what these are. So give us an idea of what things people were asking you after your paper.
Well, let's see. We had a couple of great questions from the audience about, okay, how do you gather your data? Can this be applied in a real-time feedback loop? That came from a gentleman from a very large memory manufacturer. We had some questions from a defense contractor that were asking about, how do you deploy this software? So it was very encouraging from that perspective. There's a lot of interest in advanced process control techniques, particularly techniques that are applying sophisticated machine learning type algorithms and taking us beyond one variable at a time, SPC.
But since no one's quite doing anything with the boundaries that Galaxy is currently pushing, were you able to answer those questions in a technical way enough that they felt okay? Or is it now the point? Because you come to these things and you ask these questions, and half the time they're just like, I'm under, you're not on NDA, I can't tell you, type of thing, right?
Well,
so how does that get handled in a conference like this?
I'll be honest, I suffered a little bit of imposter syndrome because this is a room full of some of the most brilliant minds in the semiconductor industry. And a lot of PhDs in the audience, a lot of engineers from very prestigious logos in our industry. So I had to get through that and understand that, okay, we've got something valuable here. None of the questions were so difficult that I couldn't answer. I was very fortunate, though, that Dr. Bougeret was available when one came up, and I was able to hand off the question to him. But for the most part, yeah, I was able to manage. So thank you.
So how do you, as a leader, how do you feel when you come to something like this and you present your newest, latest, or greatest ideas of where you're pushing the industry forward to somewhere that no one else has been, and no one else is even quite close to us, honestly? When you hear these questions, how does it steer the ship? Do you stay the same course, or do some of these questions make you go, wait a minute, we didn't think about that, or wait, we've thought about that, but we better think about that sooner because there's an iceberg up there that guy just told me about that I thought was like yonder, and now after that guy's question, or woman, I realize that it's like right in front of us. Do you have to re-steer the ship when you hear feedback on what you're talking about? Because if you can tell me it all day in the face. You can tell everybody at Galaxy it all day in the face. We're like cheerleaders, right? We're with you. But when you when you publicly display these types of ideas, you're naturally going to get some pushback. And has it made you think about things differently?
Almost always at these types of events, when I have the privilege of standing up and speaking, or even just sitting in the audience, I learn something new. When you're standing up in front of an audience, your brain is going at 3 or 4 times normal speed, though. And so somebody will be asking me a question, and I'm standing there looking at him, and I'm looking at the entire audience, and you're right. I might have this visual of oh, yeah, that's a good point. And maybe there is an iceberg. Typically what happens, though, is somebody points out an opportunity that we hadn't seen. Somebody might stand up and say, hey, we're having this particular type of problem here, and okay, that's interesting. And I'll bring it back to my development team, I'll bring it back to our research team, and start asking questions. Can we address this need? This person, like even today, we had some people come up and tell us about a specific problem they were having. It wasn't something that we were immediately considering we might go after, but after the conversation, I started thinking about it, and I started talking to my colleagues, and it feels like something we might be able to pursue, and it could be a nice business opportunity for us. So those kinds of things happen often at these types of events. It's one of the reasons that we're here.
Well, when you're in a blue ocean, you tend to find new islands.
Yes, that's brilliant. Write that down.
I just made it up on the spot. I thought you were going to laugh at me and this was going to become a blooper reel, but apparently not.
No, that was brilliant. Write it down.
Okay. So you didn't just present at the ASMC conference. You also were an attendee, and you went and saw a bunch of different talks, and I'm sure there were some things that made you go, some things that made you think a little differently. What have you seen here at the conference that has intrigued you?
Several things, actually. The keynote this morning was about the EU CHIPS Act. So the USA did one, so the EU said, hey, we want to do that too. And it's clear that governments around the world are placing a very high priority, a strategic priority on semiconductor investment. So there's going to be money available for research projects, not just fab building. So that was exciting. We may decide to start asking questions to see if there's some research projects we could get funded. I don't know. There were advanced metrology papers this morning that opened my eyes to new ways of doing things in the fab that I was not aware of. And then this afternoon, we saw several different methods, multivariate methods, mind you. So we saw several different methods of doing sort of the same thing, doing process control in the fab. So in essence, you're reading process variables off a machine, you're running that through some kind of an algorithm to create a model in some cases, and then you use that model to predict the behavior in the future. And that's a typical machine learning approach. Our approach was a little bit different. In fact, I got a question. You were asking me about questions. We got a question about how do you train your model? And I had a lot of fun being able to say we don't, because our algorithm is essentially a unsupervised machine learning algorithm. And you just tell it where to look for the previous data. It goes back and it learns based on that window you give it what a typical process should look like, and then it compares each wafer or each run going forward. So it was interesting to see how others are approaching similar problems in the industry.
It sounds like a cheat code. You've got an unsupervised model where people are trying to train models, and it's like, you made a shortcut. I'm not going to train this thing. It's just going to do what it does, and it knows what to do. Like it seems
so
like
there's a reason for that. The reason that we favor unsupervised models was it goes back to a university research project we did at Harvey Mudd College a couple of years ago, where they were creating a neural net algorithm for wafer map image processing. And the first question out of the student's mouth was, we're going to need training data. I was like, great, how much do you need? Well, we're going to need 100,000 of every possible defect type. And I said, no, it's not going to work.
Because that doesn't exist in the world anyway.
That's correct. So I said, before we even start, we have to design this in such a way that training data will not be a requirement, because training data probably will not be available, particularly for us because we're not in the fab. We're a software supplier. And so it's very rare that we get years of background data from our customers. So we're favoring unsupervised machine learning at this time for those reasons.
This sounds fascinating to me. Wes, I want to thank you so much for joining us. For those of you out there, if you have more questions for Wes, just put them in the comments. If you have more questions about unsupervised, listen, when I was unsupervised, it was it was a bad thing when I was a kid. I mean, you got this kid growing up, you know, our model here, and you're letting it run unsupervised, which to many parents is a very scary thing. So if you have more questions about that, drop those in the comments.
Not parenting questions.
No, of course not. Well, you know, hey, we could help you more ways than one. No, if you got more questions about that, go ahead and drop them in the comments or anything that we've talked about, and we'll make sure to go ahead and answer them. We will see you in the next episode from the Galaxy YouTube channel. Thank you so much for watching. Wes, thanks for joining us again.
Thank you, Dan. This was fun.
See you next time.